Chapter 1867. No wonder the fire could spread to such an extent in just a few days. Chu Luiwei looked at Sanson. Sanson, that small space of yours? Sanson knew what she was going to ask and shook his head. My small space shouldn't be like this. This place is indeed different. Chu Luiwei nodded, but the doubts in her heart deepened. The fire on Lanqing Peak was indeed emitting an unusual aura. At this moment, a familiar wave came from her body. Chu Luiwei's heart skipped a beat. It was the black shield again. She didn't move immediately, but looked around first. This barrier has been covered. We can't see outside, and the people outside can't see us either. Rong Xiu seemed to have guessed her thoughts, and said calmly and affirmatively. Chu Luiwei then felt more at ease. After hesitating for a moment, she summoned the black shield again. Sanson took a step back subconsciously. His small eyes were still full of nervousness. He was still traumatized by what happened last time. So much so that when he saw the black shield again, he would instinctively avoid it. His throat was dry, and his heart was beating wildly. He pointed at the black shield and asked in a trembling voice, "Master, don't tell me you're going to repeat what happened that day?" As he spoke, he looked up with lingering fear. He was afraid that the barrier would suddenly open and a ball of fire would burn upside down. Chu Luiwei didn't say anything, because she was also very uncertain about this now. The ripples on the black shield were still spreading out. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The wave was getting stronger and stronger, and the power contained in it was getting more and more shocking. Finally, the surrounding energy of heaven and earth gathered again and surged toward the black shield. A ray of light appeared on the shield. Although it was very weak, it couldn't be ignored. The three people present knew clearly how terrifying the light was. Sanson pointed at the black shield, his small hands trembling. He was in a bad mood. "Master, it's really starting again." Chu Luiwei stared at it. In fact, she also wanted to see what the black shield was up to. The wind whistled. The surrounding energy began to surge toward them like a tide. And all the energy was continuously poured into the black shield. The vast energy seemed to have poured into a bottomless pit, and it didn't cause any waves. The only change Chu Luiwei could see was that the more energy poured in, the brighter the light on the black shield. Finally, at a certain moment, a faint cracking sound could be heard. Crack. At the edge of the shield, there was a small corner of rust that was curled up. It looked like it was about to peel off. This seems to be a little slower than that day in the small space. Chu Luiwei analyzed. Rong Xiu looked around. It's probably because the energy of heaven and earth here isn't as to be there. Chu Luiwei nodded in understanding. Indeed, in comparison, this place could not be compared to that small space. These flames came out from under the rocks of Lan Qingfeng and formed this huge barrier. Was she the real target of these flames? Or rather, the black shield? Chu Luiwei wasn't sure. Sanson looked at Chu Luiwei and Rong Xiu. He let out a long sigh and didn't want to say anything. He could see that no matter what the situation was, the two of them would always be so calm and composed. Even if the fire was on their eyebrows, they wouldn't panic. He was left alone, nervous and uneasy. Looking at her master's calm appearance, Sanson suddenly felt a lot more at ease. He took a deep breath and clenched his fists. What was there to worry about? Since it had already happened, the best choice was to accept it. Besides, if there were any treasures hidden under Lanqing Peak, it would most likely belong to his master. Of course, this was a good thing. As for the Inksword sect outside, when the time came, he could go out and trick them. With this thought, Sanson felt more at ease. Anyway, Big Brother and the others were here. Would they really be bullied by the Inksword sect? "Master, this shield of yours seems to be able to control the flames?" Sanson quickly found the crux of the matter after putting aside those messy thoughts. Chu Luiwei's eyes lit up as she pondered. It seems to be true. She didn't think about it before. Now that Sanson reminded her, she realized that it was true. She looked behind her. On the ground, there was a crevice that spread out. The blue flames were surging out from it. The night was dark, but the main hall of the Yu residence was brightly lit. Sin Yi and the others were gathered here. The atmosphere was a little tense. Big brother, the Ink Sword sect brought Master and the others to Lanqing Peak. I'm afraid they don't have good intentions. Should we go over? Wu Yao was the first to speak, breaking the silence. Other than Sun Yi, he was the one with the highest ranking here. They had received the news the moment something happened to the Ink Sword sect. But for some reason, Big Brother didn't do anything. They couldn't help but come over. Big Brother, many people in the entire Peach Blossom Cove have gone to Lanqing Peak. Even if we go over now, we shouldn't attract any attention. Yu Jiao quickly added. Also, if we don't go, the Ink Sword sect will suspect us even more. They didn't act rashly because the news of Sanson and the others being locked up in the Ink Sword sect was sealed. But now, almost everyone knew about it. They shouldn't have anything to worry about. Sun Yi pondered for a moment and didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked at Yen Qing. Brother Yen, what do you think? The remaining pairs of eyes in the main hall all looked over. Yen Qing was called over by Sun Yi. Wu Yao and the others were a little confused when they saw him, but they didn't ask. Now that Sun Yi even took the initiative to ask for his opinion, they were even more nervous. What was Big Brother doing? Was he planning to join forces with Yen Qing? Yen Qing nodded. His Highness and the others should be fine for now. There's no need for us to do anything. But, if you're really worried, there's no harm in going. Yu Jiao's words make sense. Lanqing Peak's matter has already blown up. If we still don't do anything, it seems even more inappropriate. They looked at each other. Yen Qing didn't seem to be worried at all. Could it be that he really had some kind of confidence? Sun Yi nodded when he heard this. In that case, then, I'll go personally. As he spoke, he stood up. Big Brother. The remaining people spoke in unison, clearly wanting to follow him. You guys stay here. Sun Yi didn't give them a chance to speak at all. Then he looked at Yen Qing. I'll leave the Yu residence to Brother Yen for now. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1868. As soon as he finished speaking, a trace of astonishment flashed across the faces of everyone present. What did Big Brother mean? Leaving the safety of the entire Yu residence in Yen Qing's hands? Wasn't he trusting Yen Qing too much? Hearing this, Yen Qing's eyes were filled with shock for a moment. He was also shocked by Sun Yi's decision. However, he quickly suppressed his emotions and nodded lightly. Sun Yi exhorted a few more words before lifting his feet to leave. His slender green figure swiftly disappeared from everyone's sight. Yen Qing narrowed his eyes. This Sun Yi, he seemed to know a lot. The room fell silent. Fortunately, they had been together for a period of time and were familiar with each other. So Wu Yao and the others quickly accepted their big brother's arrangement and left after greeting Yen Qing. But little Hachi didn't appear from the beginning to the end. Maybe she was too tired from gathering information, or maybe she knew that Yen Qing was here and didn't come on purpose. Yen Qing originally wanted to ask a few people, but then he remembered that this was their personal grudge after all. It was already very troublesome to let Sun Yi get involved. There was no need to involve others. He thought about it but didn't say anything. As for Black Sword sect, he pondered for a while and left quickly. It was already late at night when Sun Yi arrived at Lanqing Peak. Under the dark night sky, only Lanqing Peak was shining brightly. Many people had already gathered here. Sun Yi's arrival didn't attract anyone's attention. He chose an inconspicuous spot and stood with his hands behind his back as he looked at Lanqing Peak. People around looked over but didn't pay much attention. After such a big commotion, people kept coming over. They were already used to it. It's been 2 hours, but Third Boss and the others haven't come out. Could they have? I don't think so. Qingshui Cliff has been quiet. If something happened to him, it's impossible for there to be no movement at all. That's true. But they haven't come out. No one knows what's going on inside. Waiting like this is really torturous. If you're tired of waiting, why don't you just leave? I'm still here to see what Lan Qingfeng is hiding and whether the Third Boss will snatch it away. I'm just here to join in the fun. I'm not like some people who are delusional and trying to snatch something from the Ink Sword sect. What nonsense are you talking about? All sorts of discussions could be heard from the surroundings. Sin Yi listened quietly with a calm expression. His eyes turned slightly as he glanced at Mo Yun and the others in the distance. The people of the Black Sword sect were indeed eyeing them covetously. Even if Master and the others made it out safely, presumably he still had to deal with this hurdle. Sin Yi slowly tightened his grip. The people outside were waiting anxiously. The people inside had almost forgotten the passage of time. Chu Luiwei sat cross-legged with her black shield placed in front of her. There was an energy vortex above the shield. At this moment, the surrounding energy of heaven and earth was still pouring into it continuously. Chu Luiwei had calmed down from her initial surprise, suspicion, and speculation. She was just waiting. They were waiting to see when this anomaly would end. The surrounding flames were still burning. It wasn't that Chu Luiwei wasn't curious about where the fire came from and what was hidden under Lanqing Peak. But the current situation did not allow her to split the mountain and find out. Therefore, she decided to focus all her attention on her black shield. Another sound was heard. Chu Luiwei perked up. The cracked rust had finally completely peeled off from the shield. Chu Luiwei heaved a long sigh of relief. Back then, in the small space, the two pieces of rust had peeled off in the blink of an eye. But to reach this place, it took several times longer than the time. But fortunately, finally, another buzzing sound was heard, but it did not come from the shield. Chu Luiwei was stunned and looked up at the two. Did you hear something? Sanson quickly nodded. Yes, it seems to be. Rong Xiu's eyes narrowed. It's coming from below. As soon as he finished speaking, Chu Luiwei felt the ground beneath her tremble violently. Master! Sanson seemed to have seen something shocking and quickly pointed behind Chu Luiwei. Chu Luiwei looked back. She saw something flying out from the burning blue flames. It turned into a dazzling light and flew towards them at high speed. Chu Luiwei remembered clearly. That was the place where the flames on Lan Qingfeng first erupted. What flew out from that place was, before Chu Luiwei could see it clearly, that thing had flown in front of her and landed on the black shield. Chu Luiwei retracted her gaze and focused on it. She saw that the place where the rust had peeled off was now covered by a piece of blue crystal. That piece of crystal was extremely thin, like blue ice. When it touched the black shield, it quickly melted and disappeared in an instant. In the next moment, the position of the shallow depression suddenly changed. Chu Luiwei inched closer and took a closer look. The complicated lines were faintly discernible. Chu Luiwei was stunned. There was a secret text engraved on the black armor. The place where the rust had peeled off faintly revealed the tip of the iceberg. It was as if the secret that had been covered in dust for a long time was finally revealed. Digression. Tomorrow at 12 o'clock, mobile users, please browse and read for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1869. Chu Luiwei was slightly stunned. The secret text seemed to contain some kind of indescribable pressure and aura, which made people unconsciously revere it. Desolate, solemn, vague, and sacred. At this moment, she seemed to see the stars change and the sun and moon reincarnate from that small piece of complicated secret text. You good? Rong Xiu's low and cold voice came. Chu Luiwei suddenly came back to her senses and looked up at him. What's wrong? Rong Xiu looked at her, his eyes slightly deep. You were entranced just now. Entranced? Chu Luiwei's face flashed with a trace of confusion. Sanson, who was next to her, explained. Master, you stared at that shield for a full quarter of an hour just now. We called you for a while. That scene, it was as if her soul had left her body, which really frightened her. Fortunately, Rong Xiu was there and finally woke her master up. Chu Luiwei opened her mouth. A quarter of an hour? It was actually that long? She thought she just took a look. What did you see just now? Rong Xiu narrowed his eyes slightly and asked softly. Chu Luiwei pursed her lips. She seemed to have seen a lot of things, but at this moment she seemed to have seen nothing. She slightly lowered her eyes. That piece of secret text seemed to have been hidden. At a rough glance, it looked like a few traces left on the surface. If one didn't look carefully, no one would know what it was. But she was very clear in her heart that there was definitely a huge secret hidden in this black shield. Nothing, I just found that this thing seems to have more background than I expected. Chu Luiyue slightly raised the corner of her mouth. She had known before that this black shield was not an ordinary item. Now it seemed that it was obviously beyond her expectations. Recalling the moment when she saw that corner of secret text, the solemn and vast majesty that almost suffocated her, her heart still couldn't help but beat faster. It was as if the blood in his body was about to boil. A dark light flashed through Rong Xiu's eyes. Sanson asked curiously, "Master, just now, what exactly was it that flew over? They are really coming for you, aren't they?" Chu Luiyue was a little surprised. "Didn't you see it?" Although the thin blue crystal was flying very quickly, it stopped for a moment on the black shield after it landed. Logically speaking, he should be able to see it clearly. Sanson looked aggrieved. No, was Master despising him for being too weak and having poor eyesight? Seeing his expression, how could Chu Luiyue not know what he was thinking? He shook his head, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. "All right, I was just asking casually. That thing came and went quickly. It's normal that you didn't see it?" As she spoke, she turned to look at Rong Xiu. As if sensing her gaze, Rong Xiu raised his sword-like eyebrows slightly, and a faint smile appeared on his scarlet thin lips. "It's not too late to talk about this later. We may be able to get out now." Chu Luiyue calmed down. Rong Xiu did see it, and it seemed that he had guessed something. Sure enough, nothing could be hidden from this man. She thought. Looking at Rong Xiu's reaction, could it be that he knew something about this thing? Maybe after getting out she could find a time to ask him, "We can get out?" Really? Sanson was at a loss when he heard Rong Xiu's words. He was so nervous just now. Why did he say that they could get out in the blink of an eye? The surrounding flames were still burning, and the enchantment hadn't changed. Chu Luiyue raised his chin. "Sanson, go and try." There was no reason not to listen to his master. Sanson obediently walked to the edge of the enchantment. Originally, he was very nervous, but after walking here he realized that the aura of the enchantment seemed to have undergone a subtle change. The dangerous feeling from before seemed to have dissipated a lot. Suddenly, a white light flashed in his mind, and he exclaimed, "Master!" The flames stopped devouring the energy of heaven and earth. Chu Luiyue nodded. Previously, when Rong Xiu said that they could go out, she had already noticed this. It seemed that the thin crystal was really the secret buried in Lanqing Peak. After realizing that the flames were not as dangerous as before, Sanson was much more confident. He held his breath and raised his hand again. Boom! A cluster of blue flames suddenly gushed out from his palm. Then, his hand slowly reached forward. The enchantment seemed to have sensed something, and suddenly ripples appeared. Then, the enchantment opened. Chu Luiyue had already put away the black shield. Seeing the enchantment suddenly open, her slender white fingers moved gently. A flame suddenly swept over and tightly wrapped around Sanson's waist, and then threw him out with force. "Damn!" Sanson screamed. This thing came too suddenly, didn't it? There was no sign at all. Even if it was a little earlier, he could have made some preparations. With this wail, his figure was thrown out in the blink of an eye. Chu Luiyue looked at Rong Xiu. "Shall we go too?" Rong Xiu's eyes flashed with a faint smile, and he whispered, You have to be merciful to your husband." Chu Luiyue's face was slightly hot. "This man," she looked away for a moment and then said, "I know." Her voice was so soft that it seemed to dissipate in the wind at any time, but there was a trace of undetectable firmness and gentleness. If she didn't feel sorry for her own man, would she expect others to feel sorry for him? Even if he didn't ask, she wouldn't do anything to him. Chu Luiyue was a little helpless, but also a little amused. Sometimes, this man was just too smart. While they were talking, two flames were already heading straight for them. The two figures were instantly wrapped up. The next moment, they were also thrown out by the flames. It was early in the morning and the sky was bright. A faint light shone from behind the clouds, and half the sky was dyed with a faint layer of gold. The people who had been waiting around Lan Qingfeng for a few days and nights had already exhausted most of their energy. Suddenly, a cry of surprise spread through the silent crowd, breaking the cold atmosphere. The enchantment opened. Like a bucket of cold water being poured into a pot of oil, it instantly boiled. Everyone was energized, and they all looked at the enchantment outside Lan Qingfeng. Sure enough, the enchantment that had been sealed for a whole night suddenly opened. Almost at the same time, a flame was thrown out. Dark blue flames wrapped around a round figure, and it quickly rushed out from within. "It's Boss Sanson." A sharp-eyed person recognized Sanson and immediately exclaimed, "He's not dead?" This voice was filled with doubt and shock. Although the figure's clothes were torn, his face was covered in dust, and he looked very miserable, but he was indeed alive and well. Everyone was stunned for a moment. They all thought that after a night of suffering, Sanson would not be able to survive. In the end, he actually came out alive. At this moment, another two figures rushed out of the enchantment. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1870. Those are third boss's two followers? They actually came out? Someone muttered in shock. They couldn't be blamed for being shocked. This matter was too strange. If Sanson didn't die, they could still understand. After all, he was the owner of the small space in Qingshui Cliff. The flames he possessed were almost the same as the flames on Lanqing Peak. Everyone might be a little surprised that he could keep his life, but after thinking about it carefully, they felt that it was normal. But what's going on with those two followers? They actually followed closely and came out unscathed? Of course, the two of them didn't seem to be in good condition either. They seemed to be injured. However, compared to the number of people who had died under the blue flames, this was simply too strange. Mo Yun narrowed his eyes the moment he saw them come out. At this point, he was full of doubts about these people. He walked forward. After Sanson was thrown out, it took him a lot of effort to stabilize his body. The moment he stood still, he was acutely aware of the gazes around him. This made him tense up. He didn't need to look to know how those people were looking at him at this time. Sanson lowered his eyes, rolled his eyes, and immediately reacted. At this moment, Chu Luiwei and Rong Xiu rushed out of the enchantment almost at the same time. At first glance, the three of them were wrapped in the flames and thrown out fiercely. But Sanson knew in his heart that it wasn't that easy to make these people completely believe this. "Third boss." A familiar and cold voice came from behind him. Sanson's heart trembled and he turned back to look. His face was a little panicked and confused, as if he hadn't realized what had happened. "Vice sect leader?" Mo Yun stared at him closely, and the corner of his mouth twitched. "Third boss, it seems that you're really lucky. So many people tried to go in before, but they lost their lives before they even got close. Not only did you go in, but after a night you came out alive." Although he was smiling, there was no trace of a smile at the corner of his eyes. Especially those eyes. It was probably because he had been here for several days without sleep and rest. His eyes were bloodshot, which made him look even colder. Being stared at like this, Sanson only felt a chill rising from the soles of his feet. His heart trembled. "Thank you for your concern, Vice Sect Master. I was just lucky." Mo Yun looked behind him and said word by word. "The fact that third boss came out alone is a fluke. The fact that the three of you managed to escape safely isn't something that can be explained by the word fluke. Looks like third boss's ability has far exceeded our expectations." Although he felt that the scene in front of him was very strange, he did not associate it with Chu Luiwei and Rong Xiu. After all, from beginning to end, the two of them really looked no different from ordinary followers. Mo Yun subconsciously attributed all these reasons to Sanson. It was normal for him to think that way. After all, Sanson was the owner of the small space in Qingshui Cliff. With such a fortuitous encounter, it was normal for him to have more confidence than ordinary people. Sanson smiled awkwardly and bitterly. "Vice Sect Master, to tell you the truth, I also don't know what's going on. Fortunately, Mo Yun did not suspect Master and the others. But now, Mo Yun's attention was obviously on him. Sanson was very clear that it would not be so easy to get away with it this time. Sure enough, after hearing his words, Mo Yun's face was expressionless. Obviously, he did not believe it. Vice Sect Master, the fire seems to be smaller. A voice came from the side. Sanson took a look and saw that it was Mo Lin who spoke. Previously, he had been standing silently by the side, looking dispirited and dejected. He was completely different from his past glory. Sanson guessed that it should be because he did not handle Lan Qingfeng's matter well, so Mo Lin was punished by Mo Yun and became like this. It was just that Mo Lin was obviously unwilling, which was why he came forward immediately. Mo Yun looked in the direction of his voice and frowned slightly. The flames that were still burning before did not continue to spread at this time. Could it be this was also because of Sanson? Countless guesses flashed through Mo Yun's mind. Go over and take a look. Mo Yun thought for a while and made a decision. Mo Lin was shocked at first, then he clenched his teeth tightly. He knew that it was very dangerous, but it was also his only chance to turn the tables. He had to seize it. Mo Lin turned around without hesitation and went straight to the barrier on Lan Qingfeng. When he reached the barrier, he quickly mobilized the force in his body and pulled out the sword at his waist. He held the sword hilt tightly with both hands and slashed down fiercely. This move condensed 100% of his strength. A greenish-black sword light tore through the void and headed straight for the barrier. Swoosh! That originally incomparably sturdy barrier was suddenly split open. In an instant, the crowd of onlookers exclaimed, "Wasn't that barrier incomparably sturdy before? Even if everyone joined forces, they still could not open it? Now, it was actually split open by Mo Lin so easily?" One had to know that although Mo Lin was strong, he was also injured previously. The strength that he could exert now was only 70% to 80% of his peak strength. It's not that Mo Lin has become stronger, but the power of the barrier has weakened. Someone realized something and exclaimed softly. The people present were not stupid. Seeing this situation, their brains spun and they could almost guess what had happened. But the key point was, how did the barrier suddenly weaken? It was hard not to link this to Sanson, who had just come out. Mo Yun glanced at Sanson and said meaningfully, "Don't worry, Boss Sanson, it seems that you are really our lucky star. So many people in the Black Sword sect were unable to solve this problem, but when it came to you, you only spent a single night to solve it. If I had known, I would have invited you over earlier. Then, so many people would not have died in vain." Mo Yun did not feel heartache or regret for the deaths of those people. He just felt that it was a disgrace. There were so many people in Inksword sect, but they could not even compare to Sanson. All the effort they had put in the past few days had been wasted. With so many people watching, they would only think that Inksword sect was incompetent. Hearing this, Sanson's back was drenched in cold sweat. He was not stupid enough to think that this was really a compliment to him. On the other side, after Mo Lin split open a hole in the barrier, the entire barrier quickly dissipated. In less than 15 minutes, only the blue flames were left on the azure peak. But the momentum of the flames was also gradually decreasing. Under everyone's gaze, the flames retreated into the cracks in the mountain rocks, leaving only a low line of fire burning quietly. Mo Yun's expression was cold. "Mo Lin, you and the others continue to guard here." Mo Lin knew that he had atoned for his sins and escaped a calamity. He heaved a sigh of relief. "Yes." Mo Yun turned to look at Sanson. "Boss Sanson, I have some things that I would like to ask you about in detail. I wonder if it is convenient?" Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1871. Sanson really wanted to say, "It's not convenient." However, he didn't want to die so quickly, so he nodded. "It's convenient. If Vice Sect Leader has any instructions, just say it. There's no need to be so polite." Mo Yun laughed. The laughter was very strange, with a sigh and a hint of sarcasm. What kind of person is third boss? How could we offend him? Who knows, we might have to rely on third boss in the future. It's only right for us to be polite. Sanson was speechless. Mo Yun had already determined that everything was related to him. How could he refute? With so many pairs of eyes watching, the power of the barrier was indeed reduced when he entered and exited. He could even break it with a single sword strike. He wouldn't be able to clear his name even if he jumped into the Yellow River. However, compared to his master being discovered, it was better for Mo Yun and the others to place all their suspicions on him. Sanson's mood recovered a little when he thought of this. He lowered his eyes slightly, looking embarrassed and helpless. I'll just listen to Vice Sect Leader's arrangements. Mo Yun turned around and planned to return to Ink Sword Sect. Just as he took a step forward, he paused again and turned his head halfway. The matter of Lan Qingfeng has been settled. Everyone please leave. This voice was low and cold, carrying with it a high and mighty arrogance. It was as if everyone should follow his orders and couldn't be disobeyed. The onlookers had different expressions. Previously, Ink Sword Sect had tried to cover it up. Now that the matter was out in the open, they didn't care anymore and directly ordered them to leave. This meant that they wanted to take over Lan Qingfeng. However, no matter how dissatisfied the onlookers were, no one dared to stand out and challenge Mo Yun. In the past few days, Ink Sword Sect had suffered heavy casualties, but Mo Yun didn't even blink. It was obvious that he was determined to get Lan Qingfeng. If anyone wanted to go against them, they would have to pay an extremely painful price. After Mo Yun finished speaking, he didn't care about the onlookers' reaction and turned to leave. He really didn't care about these people. At this moment, he only wanted to find Sanson and ask him what had happened inside the barrier. Sanson braced himself and followed him. Vice Sect Leader, I'll go back with you. However, my 2 followers have been tormented during this period. I wonder if you can let them go back first. Mo Yun did not turn his head and just waved his hand. They were just 2 insignificant servants. There was nothing to worry about. As long as he brought Sanson back, everything would come to light. Sanson heaved a sigh of relief and turned to Chu Luiyue. Alright, you guys can go back first. While you're at it, report to the people in the mansion that you're safe. After some time, I will naturally return. Chu Luiyue's lips moved slightly. She wanted to say something, but when she saw the look in Sanson's eyes, she finally nodded. Yes. The matter of Lan Qingfeng had finally come to an end. Other than the people from the Black Sword Sect who continued to stand guard in the vicinity, the others all left one after another. However, in the eyes of the people of Peach Blossom Dock, this matter was not truly over. After all, the fire on Lankingfeng Peak was still burning, and the secrets hidden within had yet to be revealed. Everyone began to observe, waiting for the Black Sword Sect's next move. Chu Luiyue and Rong Xiu were silent the entire way back to the Yu estate. Yan Qing was already waiting at the main gate. Seeing the 2 of them return, Yan Qing's tense nerves finally relaxed a little. Your Highness, Princess. Rong Xiu nodded. Close the door. Yan Qing responded and went to close the door. Chu Luiyue turned around. Tsin-Yi. The void trembled and a figure walked out. It was Tsin-Yi, who had gone to Lan Qingfeng Peak to check on the situation. When he saw Chu Luiyue and the others come out of the barrier, he wanted to go forward. However, Mo Yun was staring at him covetously. After careful consideration, he decided to wait and see. Also, because Chu Luiyue and Rong Xiu pretended to be ordinary servants, it was inconvenient for him to welcome them. So, he decided to hide and secretly returned with the 2 of them. Master, Your Highness. Tsin-Yi bowed. Chu Luiyue glanced at the closed door. His eyes darkened. It seems that the people from Ink Sword Sect won't leave so easily for a while. Besides Tsin-Yi, there were a few people from Ink Sword Sect who had been secretly following them. Along the way, she and Rong Xiu pretended not to notice. But even when the 2 of them returned, those people still hadn't left. Instead, they were hiding around the Yu mansion. Obviously, Mo Yun was still very vigilant against them. 3 high gods are nothing to worry about. Tsin-Yi said indifferently. I've already left a mark on them. Once they make a move, I'll know immediately. Chu Luiwe nodded slightly. She had always trusted Sun Yi. Hearing this, Yan Qing glanced at Sun Yi again. 3 high gods were nothing to worry about. To be able to say such words, Sun Yi's strength was probably even more shocking than he had expected, Rong Xiu said. Let's go in first and discuss. Wu Yao and the others knew that the 2 of them had returned and hurried over. The hall was soon bustling with noise and excitement. Master, were you injured in Inksword Sect these few days? Did those people do anything to you? Master and His Highness are both back. Is there a conclusion to the matter at Lan Qingfeng? Inksword Sect seems to have suffered heavy casualties this time. Why did they let them go so easily? Wu Yao and the others hurriedly asked as soon as they saw Chu Luiwe and Sun Yi. 13 was the first to realize that something was wrong. Where's third brother? Master, he didn't come back with you? When he said this, Wu Yao and the others realized that Sanson was really not around. Chu Luiwe looked at 13 with relief. 13 was probably the only one who could still remember Sanson at this time. He was brought back to Inksword Sect by Mo Yun. The others were stunned. Then, Chu Luiwe briefly told them everything that had happened in the past few days, including the last night when the 3 of them were sucked into the boundary of Lan Qingfeng and came out in the end. Of course, she didn't mention that the black shield had been peeled off in the boundary. After hearing this, the few of them were all stunned. Then isn't third brother in danger this time? 13 opened his mouth and asked helplessly. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1872. Although they did not see what happened to Lan Qingfeng with their own eyes, based on what their master had said, the people from Majian Sect would definitely place all their suspicions on Sanson. Sanson has a small space, and Majian Sect still needs him to provide them with heavenly treasures. They won't kill him for the time being, Chu Luiwe said calmly. Moreover, after this incident, they will only be more curious about Sanson. Before they get a satisfactory answer from Sanson, they won't do anything to him. However, she was referring to the assassins. As for whether they would use some methods to deal with Sanson, no one could be sure. After all, Luiwe frowned slightly as she recalled that pair of cold and murderous eyes. She was not worried about Sanson's safety, but she was worried that he would be tortured. Majian Sect was very evil. Who knew how they would treat him? Then, are we just going to wait like this? 13 was slightly relieved after hearing Chu Luiwe's words. However, when he thought about how Sanson was taken away by the people from Majian Sect because of Lan Qingfeng, he still felt uneasy. Although he was young, he was extremely smart. The incident that happened on the day of the Wangshan Tribulation was still vivid in his mind. In his impression, the people from Majian Sect were all very dangerous. Now that Sanson was trapped, it was hard for him to be completely at ease. Chu Luiwe did not say anything. She tapped her fingers lightly on the armrest. In fact, she had been thinking about this problem along the way. If they just waited like this and did nothing, they would be too passive. However, at the moment, they did not seem to have a suitable solution. This time, Mo Yun was determined to get some information from Sanson. He would not let Sanson go so easily. Master! At this moment, a pleasant voice was heard. Then, an enchanting and gorgeous figure floated in from the door. Master! You're finally back. Little Hachi missed you so much. As Little Hachi spoke, her body swayed as she floated towards Chu Luiwe. She was about to throw herself into Chu Luiwe's arms. Chu Luiwe's mouth twitched. Rong Xiu looked up slightly. Little Hachi felt a chill at the back of her head and subconsciously paused. Hiss, how could I forget that this person is also here? However, Little Hachi quickly regained her composure. She turned around and retracted her foot. Colored ropes fluttered in the air as broken jade collided with each other. Only her white and eye-catching waist was exposed. She walked lightly to Chu Luiwe's side. Master, Little Hachi misses you so much? Chu Luiwe looked at her and kindly reminded her. Little Hachi, there are 2 marks on your face from sleeping. Although it was very shallow. But on that magnificent face, it was too conspicuous. Little Hachi was shocked. She instantly widened her eyes and covered her face. Really? Chu Luiwei lifted his chin. Asked Yanqing. Yanqing was standing opposite little Hachi. He could see her just by looking up. Actually, Chu Luiwei said this on purpose. After all, in a sense, little Hachi and Yanqing were already old enemies. Little Hachi could disregard her image in front of the 13 guards, but she would never lose face in front of her enemy. As expected, after hearing Chu Luiwei's words, little Hachi's eyes became even more frightened. She subconsciously looked up at Yanqing. Yanqing sensed the dangerous warning in her eyes. He thought for a moment and spoke gently, which was rare of him. The green wooden pillow is gentle and has the effect of sleeping. If Miss Little Hachi is worried about leaving marks after sleeping for too long, you can cover them with the cloud weaving brocade. The cloud weaving brocade is delicate and exquisite. It won't harm little Hachi's skin. Yanqing couldn't finish the second half of his sentence. Little Hachi seemed to have suffered a great blow. She held her heart with one hand and stepped back continuously. You win, little Hachi said in disbelief. Then, she quickly turned around and ran away. Before anyone could say anything, she had already floated around like a butterfly and disappeared without a trace. She really couldn't stay in this place any longer. The hall was completely silent. Yanqing's lips moved slightly. His handsome and cold eyes were slightly furrowed. He spoke quite politely just now. Why did it seem like he offended her again? Chu Luiwei looked at Yanqing with sympathy and admiration. It was also the first time she met a man who could make little Hachi run away in anger. He was really amazing. The remaining people, including Wu Yao, all looked at him with admiration. It was always little Hachi who bullied them. When had they ever seen little Hachi being humiliated repeatedly? Lord Yanqing was indeed the saint's confidant. His methods and wisdom were indeed extraordinary. Chu Luiwei gave Rong Xiu a look. His Highness has always been good at wooing his wife. How did he bring up such an insensitive man? Rong Xiu was calm and collected. I was not only good at wooing his wife. However, Yanqing was a blockhead in this aspect. He shouldn't have placed any hopes on him. Chu Luiwei was speechless. Sometimes, people should be a little more humble. Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows. He was somewhat suspicious. Am I not humble enough? Perhaps I should help you deepen her impression? Chu Luiwei choked. She was defeated again. There were some people she really couldn't beat. She should have known that she couldn't compete with Rong Xiu in this aspect. She coughed and tactfully changed the topic. Ink Sword Sect has sent a few people to secretly monitor the Yu residence. These people will stay in the residence for the time being. As for Sanson, we'll act according to the situation. The few people looked at each other. At present, this seemed to be the most suitable choice. Yes. Ink Sword Sect. In the study, Mo Yun was sitting behind the table, leaning against the chair with his eyes closed. He seemed to be resting. However, there was a person in front of him who was respectfully kneeling on one knee and saying something. After a while, Mo Yun finally opened his eyes. That's all. That person immediately said. Vice Sect Master, that's all. There has always been a barrier outside the Yu residence. Our people can't get too close to avoid alerting the enemy. Mo Yun nodded, but his expression was even colder. After returning this morning, he asked Sanson a lot of questions. However, he was very dissatisfied with Sanson's answers. As long as he asked what happened inside the barrier, Sanson's description was very vague. No matter how Mo Yun asked, he insisted that he didn't know. He said that he didn't do anything from the beginning to the end. He was inexplicably pulled in and thrown out. As for why the situation changed later, he had no idea. He was obviously not telling the truth. Mo Yun wanted to investigate the situation in the Yu residence. However, it sounded like everything was normal in the Yu residence. You can leave first. Continue to monitor. If there are any abnormalities, report immediately. Mo Yun waved his hand. That person responded. Suddenly, he thought of something and said, That's right, Vice Sect Master. A few days ago, the new people in the Yu residence seemed to have an unusual relationship with Third Boss. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from LoveNet. Chapter 1873. How is it unusual? Mo Yun's interest was piqued as he asked. That person pondered for a moment and said, "A few days ago, those people came to Peach Blossom Cove, and it seemed that third boss personally went to pick them up. You residents also held a welcoming ceremony. Many people know about this. Third boss seemed to be especially respectful to two of them. Mo Yun usually put most of his attention on Ink Sword Sect, and did not pay much attention to other things. Or rather, he did not care about those people at all, including you residents. Although he valued Sanson, it was mainly because of that small space. Finally, you residents. Mo Yun had always thought that it was just Sanson's own entertainment. As long as it did not affect Ink Sword Sect, he did not care. When Sanson did these things that day, he did not deliberately hide it. So some people in Peach Blossom Cove knew. As long as they asked a little, they would know the general idea. Tell me, what's going on? Mo Yun was a little suspicious as he continued to ask. Although he did not know much about you residents, he knew that it was Sanson's private residence. Other than those that Sanson especially trusted, he would rarely invite other people into the U residence. Now that he actually welcomed those people with such fanfare, it could be seen that it was indeed unusual. If it was before, he would be too lazy to care about this. But now that he wanted to find the answer from Sanson, he naturally could not let go of any clues. That person lowered his head even more. This U residence is heavily guarded, and third boss seems to be especially protective of those people. After they went in, they never came out again, so we have not found out their specific identity. What he heard before was basically what he heard from others. Mo Yun sneered and stood up. I'll go and ask personally. Sanson was locked in the previous room again. Compared to the previous uneasiness, he was much more magnanimous and relieved this time. As long as Master and the rest were safe, he could temporarily put down the stone in his heart. As for himself, with that small space as his trump card, he knew that Mo Yun would not kill him. Besides, in these 2 years, he and Mo Yun had interacted many times, and knew how to fight for himself to the maximum. So, Mo Yun did not ask anything. After leaving, Sanson simply packed up and went to sleep. He was really exhausted these past few days, all right? In the end, he did not expect that not long after he fell asleep, Mo Yun actually returned. Mo Yun directly pushed the door open and entered. Seeing that Sanson was sleeping, he was speechless for a moment. Third boss seems to be enjoying himself. How could he fall asleep in such a crude place? Sanson, who was woken up, was full of anger, but he didn't dare to lose his temper. He quickly got up and bowed with a smile. Vice sect leader is too modest. If your place is considered crude, then wouldn't my place be a thatched hut? I was really too tired, so I fell asleep. Mo Yun did not pay attention to his words. His sharp eyes stared intently at him as he kept thinking. Sanson was actually able to sleep in this place. Was it because she was too confident, or did she really have a clear conscience? Third boss, there's no need to be so modest. I've heard that your Manor is also extremely elegant and wealthy. Alright, I heard that a few friends of third boss came a few days ago. Why haven't I heard you mention it? Sanson's heart sank. It turned out that Mo Yun came for this. He was obviously suspicious of the identity of his master, otherwise he would never ask such a question. Sanson's thoughts turned, but his expression was still very natural. He smiled and said, "Oh, you mean my big brother and the others? I specially invited them to come this time. After coming to Peach Blossom Dock, I relied on you to do some business. I wanted to invite them over to have a look, and let them know that I'm doing well here." This was basically the truth. So Sanson said it very sincerely. Even Mo Yun could not see anything wrong with it. After becoming rich, it was normal to invite one's family and friends over for a gathering. Mo Yun pondered for a moment. Those few, are all your brothers and sisters? Sanson smiled from ear to ear. Yes, they're all my brothers and sisters. But we're very close. Mo Yun narrowed his eyes and suddenly laughed. But why did I hear that there are two of them who are very unusual? Even third boss has to be respectful? You manner. Chu Luiwei and Rong Xiu returned to the room. She pondered for a moment, and still chose to summon the black shield. As expected, the shield had become heavier now. Chu Luiwei was almost certain that when the rust on it was completely peeled off, the engraved secret text would be completely revealed. Then this thing would reveal its true appearance. Now, only a few pieces had fallen off, and it was already so heavy. It was almost hard to imagine how it would feel to hold it in her hand when all the rust was gone. Chu Luiwei even suspected that when the time came, if she still had her current strength, she was afraid that she could not even lift it. Rong Xiu, do you recognize the secret text on it? Chu Luiwei looked up and asked. Rong Xiu walked over, his deep eyes stared at the shallow dent for a while, and shook his head. I can't see it. Chu Luiwei was a little disappointed, but in fact, this was also within her expectations. Why this shield? What's wrong with it? Looking at her solemn expression, there was a hint of worry between her eyebrows. Rong Xiu reached out his hand and gently smoothed the faint wrinkles between her eyebrows. Chu Luiwei was silent for a moment, and then nodded seriously. She pointed at the black shield with a headache. I have to turn the entire peach blossom dock upside down. Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows slightly. Literally. Chu Luiwei nodded with difficulty. Literally. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1874. Before Chu Luiwei could start to search the peach blossom dock, trouble had already come knocking on their door. Because the people from Black Sword Sect had come. And it was Mo Yun who came personally. And with him, there was also Sanson. Previously, he had wanted to ask Sanson something, but Sanson was very tactful and could speak very well. No matter how he talked, he could not tell which sentence was the truth. In the end, Mo Yun decided to make a trip himself. His decision was very sudden. When he brought Sanson to Yu Manor, the servants of Black Sword Sect who were secretly in charge of monitoring were all stunned. But at this time, Mo Yun was too lazy to care about that. Seeing Sanson return, everyone in Yu Manor was very surprised. The news quickly spread to Chu Luiwei and Rong Xiu's ears. The two immediately understood. They came with ill intentions. Looks like Mo Yun did not get the answer he wanted from Sanson. Chu Luiwei muttered. Rong Xiu nodded. This time he should be coming for us. Chu Luiwei frowned slightly. Previously, she and Rong Xiu disguised themselves as servants and followed Sanson around, so they should not have revealed any flaws. Now that Mo Yun came, did he suddenly know something? Looks like this time, we don't have to bother with any disguises. Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows slightly. Mo Yun wanted to see the real them. The moment Mo Yun stepped into Yu Manor, he felt that this place was very strange. There were not many servants in the manor, but there was an indescribable pressure everywhere. Walking here, he always felt like he was being watched by someone in the dark. This feeling made him very uncomfortable, but also made him even more certain of his previous guess. Sanson's Yu Manor. There were indeed many secrets hidden here. The two of them walked all the way to the main hall. Sanson was already drenched in cold sweat. Go invite Big Brother and the others over. Before he finished speaking, a tall and slender green figure had already slowly arrived. It is my Yu Manor's honor to have an esteemed guest. The voice was light and calm, with an inexplicable aura that made people feel at ease. It was Tsinyi. Sanson raised his head to look. When he saw that familiar face, his wildly beating heart immediately calmed down a lot. Big Brother. He hurriedly stood up and walked towards Tsinyi. In fact, he had a lot of things he wanted to say, but Mo Yun was behind him at this time, so he could only swallow those words. Big Brother, this is Black Sword Sect's Vice Sect Leader, Lord Mo Yun. Vice Sect Leader Mo, this is my big brother. Sanson stood in the middle and gave a simple introduction to the two. Tsinyi nodded slightly at Mo Yun. I am Tsinyi. Greetings, Vice Sect Master. Mo Yun scrutinized the man in front of him. He looked to be in his 20s and wore a green robe, looking magnanimous and upright. His eyes were narrow and indifferent, revealing a bit of coldness. Such magnanimity was indeed not something an ordinary person could possess. No wonder he could make the sophisticated Sanson so obedient. Third boss, didn't a few people come to your manor a few days ago? Why is there only one person here? Mo Yun dusted his clothes with a faint arrogance on his face. I came to visit personally. Could it be that you're not even willing to give me this face? Sanson was in a difficult position when Sun Yi spoke indifferently. Wu Yao and the rest are in the backyard. I've already informed them to come over. Vice Sect Leader Mo, please wait for a moment. As soon as he finished speaking, someone came outside the door. Big brother, is there a distinguished guest? The one who spoke was Wu Yao. He looked like he had just finished punching and his head was still sweating. Yu Jiao was with him. He was holding a wooden sword in his hand. Sun Yi glanced at it. Perhaps it was because he had been using it a little hard these few days, but Yu Jiao's wooden sword already had obvious traces of wear and tear. Looks like I'll have to change it later. Sun Yi thought silently in his heart. This is Vice Sect Leader Mo of Black Sword Sect. He raised his hand. Wu Yao and Yu Jiao immediately understood and bowed respectfully. So you're Vice Sect Leader Mo. Sorry for the disrespect. We've long heard of your great name, but we didn't expect you to come personally today. Everything else aside, Wu Yao and the rest were very clear about what to do. Their current identities were just Sanson's friends, so they naturally had to curry favor with Mo Yun. Mo Yun's gaze swept across the two of them, disapproving in his heart. Compared to Sun Yi, who had appeared first, these two were indeed not very pleasing to the eye. Not long after, Shifang also arrived. Mo Yun finally couldn't help but frown. Why are there mud spots on this person's pants? Shifang, who had just finished cleaning up the vegetable garden and was inexplicably despised, had an innocent look on his face. Didn't he just want to eat some of the vegetables he grew? Why did this vice sect leader have to show such a look of disdain? However, the other party's status was noble, so he could only suppress his dissatisfaction for now. He looked at Sun Yi. Big brother, Sister 8 has gone into seclusion to cultivate. I'm afraid she won't be able to come for a while. Sun Yi nodded in understanding. When the few people present heard this, they all revealed expressions of understanding. They had known little Hachi for so long, but they had never heard of her going into seclusion to cultivate. It was most likely that she had been angered by Yan Qing, so she went to take a bubble bath and sleep. 13th Yu was very clear about her temper, so they weren't surprised. Mo Yun originally wanted to ask more, but his expression suddenly froze. It was 13 who had come in. Sanson hurriedly said. 13th brother, why aren't you greeting Vice Sect Leader Mo? 13 obediently bowed, then stood behind Shifang. Mo Yun's gaze, however, stayed on him for quite a while. Boss San, your 13th brother seems to be quite talented. If he can enter Ink Sword Sect to cultivate, he will definitely achieve great things in the future. Sanson's heart skipped a beat. He knew that 13 had almost been snatched away by Ink Sword Sect when he went out to break through. Why did Mo Yun also seem to be very interested in 13 now that he was here? 13's talent was quite good, but what did that have to do with them? Thank you for the compliment, Vice Sect Leader Mo. It's his honor to be appreciated by you. But 13 is still young, and he has been following Big Brother and the others for so many years. I'm afraid he won't be able to get used to it. Sanson politely rejected Mo Yun's suggestion. Mo Yun's eyes narrowed slightly. Sanson was a smart person. He had already made it so obvious just now. Anyone with a brain would go with the flow and send him to Ink Sword Sect. There were so many people in Peach Blossom Cove who wanted to enter Ink Sword Sect but couldn't. Now that he took the initiative to ask, Sanson rejected him? Sanson's back was already soaked in cold sweat. But he didn't dare and didn't want to send 13 out. Even if he sensed the hidden warning in Mo Yun's eyes, he still braced himself and chose to reject. Mo Yun paused for a moment, but didn't continue to dwell on this matter. He looked around. Except for that little Hachi, Boss San, is everyone here? Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1875. Sanson choked. Of course, not everyone was here. He also knew that Mo Yun was here for his master and the rest. But, Vice Sect Leader please forgive me for not going out to welcome you. At this moment, a clear voice with a smile was heard. Mo Yun seemed to have sensed something and looked up. Two figures were walking in hand. The one who spoke was a woman in a red dress that outlined her slender and exquisite figure. Her long black hair was tied up neatly. Her face was beautiful and unparalleled. What made one's heart sway the most was that pair of black jade-like eyes. They were calm and indifferent. As her eyes moved, it was as if there were thousands of stars sprinkling down, shining brightly. At this moment, her red lips were slightly curled up with a faint smile. The moment she entered, almost all the scenery around her was overshadowed. Except for the man beside her. His white clothes were whiter than snow, and he looked like an immortal. His face was noble and enchanting, revealing a noble aura in his bones. Just by standing there, one could only look up to him. These two were top-notch figures. When they stood together, they could easily steal everyone's attention. Mo Yun stared at the two of them and slowly clenched his fists. With just one look, he knew that his previous guess was right. They were definitely the two people that Sanson was very respectful to as mentioned by his subordinates. When he saw Sun-Yi earlier, he already felt that he could not be underestimated. Now that he saw the two of them, this feeling became even stronger. But for some reason, he had a strange feeling in his heart. It was as if he had seen these two people somewhere before. You are... He was about to speak when another figure suddenly rushed in from outside. Hearing the hurried footsteps, Chu Luiwei and Rong Xiu also turned to look. The person who came was Yan Qing. However, at this moment, his face that had always been indifferent like an iceberg was actually frowning, and it carried a trace of anxiety and nervousness. Chu Luiwei suddenly felt a faint uneasiness in his heart. Yan Qing had always been calm and rarely revealed such an expression. Could it be that something had happened? Your Highness, someone is coming. Yan Qing stepped forward and said in a deep voice. Everyone present was flabbergasted. At this time, who would come to the Yu Manor? And judging from the situation, it didn't look good. Rong Xiu narrowed his eyes. Who? Yan Qing made a fist salute. The Nan family. At this moment, Nan Yuxing had just led his men into the Peach Blossom Dock. Accompanying him were the 8 elders of the Nan family as well as Luo Yan. Although the number of elders in the Nan family was not small, sending out 8 of them at once was really not a lot. Moreover, it was the Peach Blossom Dock that was thousands of miles away. So this is the so-called Peach Blossom Dock. As Nan Yuxing walked forward, he looked at his surroundings. His eyes were extremely cold, and there was a faint blood-red color in his eyes, which made people feel uneasy. But what was even more frightening was the aura on his body. In just a few short months, not only had he recovered, he had even broken through to become a god. Although the people on the street did not know them, they could sense that this group of people was not to be trifled with, so they all retreated. There had been too many things happening in the Peach Blossom Dock recently, and ordinary people did not dare to get involved. They really know how to choose a place. Nan Yuxing sneered with a hint of mockery. Luo Yan followed silently, his eyes slightly lowered, and no one could tell what he was thinking. Only the dark circles under his eyes showed that he had not been living well recently. The remaining 8 elders also followed without saying a word. The atmosphere was tense, and there was a strong killing intent. Anyone could tell that they were here to cause trouble. Many people on the street moved away, and they muttered in secret. These people were powerful, and they were filled with killing intent. No one knew who had offended them. Soon, everyone knew the answer. Because Nan Yuxing and his group had directly arrived at the Yu Manor. This caused many people who were watching in secret to be shocked. Third boss luck was really bad recently. First, he was entangled with the Black Sword sect, and was locked up for a long time. Now, his enemies came to find him. With such a lineup, a fierce battle was unavoidable. Nan Yuxing and his group stood in front of the door. Tell your master to come out and die. When Chu Luiwei and her group came out, they saw such a scene. Nan Yuxing and his group were blocking the door. They came aggressively, and their killing intent was dense. The people of the Yu Manor had already gathered and formed a defensive line. But compared to the people on the other side, their momentum was obviously weaker. There were 10 people on the other side, and 6 of them were venerables. And Nan Yuxing was one of them. Chu Luiwei frowned slightly, and she looked at Nan Yuxing suspiciously. Then she relaxed and smiled. I was wondering who it was. So it's young Master Nan. It seems that your body has recovered recently? Her words were like rubbing salt on Nan Yuxing's wound. His face twisted for a moment, and then he laughed out of anger. Are you disappointed that I'm not dead? Chu Luiwei shook her head sincerely. That's not it. I'm just curious. If you don't want to say it, don't say it. She really wanted to know how Nan Yuxing managed to recover and make a breakthrough in such a short period of time after all his yuan meridians were broken. Even she might not have the ability to do so. Nan Yuxing sneered. Shangguan Yu Rong Xiu. You killed my sister, and now you're still laughing? Chu Luiwei and Rong Xiu looked at each other. Nanny? When did they kill her? Behind them, Mo Yun, who only wanted to take a look, instantly changed his expression when he heard these words. Those 2 people? Digression, it's the end of the year, and there are more things to do at home. Also, Kon Ka is not feeling well. After sorting out the details in the morning, there are even fewer. Make up for it at 6 p.m. Love mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1876. Nan Yuxing, you can eat whatever you want, but you can't say whatever you want. We haven't seen Nanny since we parted ways at the god-slaying tomb. How can we kill her? Chu Luiwei realized that there was a big misunderstanding. Her eyes turned cold as she clarified word by word. Although she wasn't afraid of others finding trouble with her, she didn't want to be blamed for something unrelated to her. However, Nan Yuxing seemed to have heard a joke. He suddenly raised his hand and criticized in a sharp voice. Her corpse was found in the forest not far from the Yuntian Tower. She died not long after your wedding. Do you dare to say that this matter has nothing to do with you? Nan Yuxing was furious. Some time ago, he didn't pay much attention to other things because of his health. He didn't even know that Nan Yi went to the Yuntian Tower during Rong Xiu and Chu Liyue's wedding. If he knew at that time, he would definitely stop her. When he asked about Nan Yi's situation again, he received news that she was already dead. The time, place, and all the clues pointed to the Yuntian Tower. In his heart, he was certain that Nan Yi's sudden visit had angered Rong Xiu and the others. Not only did they refuse to let her in, they even chose to kill her in the end. As her elder brother, how could he not take revenge for this? Looking at the furious Nan Yuxing, Chu Luiwei almost laughed out loud. Ridiculous and laughable. This was the biggest feeling she had after listening to him. It seemed that although Nan Yuxing's body had recovered, his brain wasn't working well. Nan Yuxing, you said it yourself. She died outside the Yuntian Tower after our wedding. Then I'd like to ask, what does this have to do with us? Also, you have to pay attention to evidence. Since you're so sure, what evidence can you produce? Nan Yuxing sneered. He knew that these people wouldn't admit it. But it didn't matter. He looked at Luo Yan beside him. Uncle Luo Yan, as expected, they refused to admit it. Sorry to trouble you. Luo Yan nodded and looked at Rong Xiu and Chu Luiwei. Just now, he was standing half a step behind Nan Yuxing with his head slightly lowered. Chu Luiwei didn't pay much attention to him. At this time, he raised his head, and Chu Luiwei and the others finally saw his appearance clearly. They couldn't help but be shocked. Unlike the high-spirited man they had seen in the god-slaying mound, the Luo Yan standing in front of them now was a completely different person. His cheeks were sunken, his eyes were bloodshot, and his stubble was a little messy. He looked very haggard. At first glance, it was as if he had experienced a huge blow. I was the one who accompanied Yi to the Yuntian Tower that day. Luo Yan spoke with a coarse and hoarse voice, as if he had not spoken for a long time. After we were rejected by the Yuntian Tower, I persuaded Yi to go back. Yi listened to me and agreed to go back to the Nan family with me. At that time, she was in a bad mood, so we planned to find a place to rest in the nearby mountains. But who knew that not long after we arrived, someone would sneak up on us? He paused, and there seemed to be something surging in his eyes. Although the attacker hid very well, I saw the totem he summoned when he attacked. It was undoubtedly the totem of the Yuntian Tower. Nan Yuxing had heard about this from Luo Yan before, but when he heard it again he was still furious. He stared at Chu Luiwei and Rong Xiu, and there seemed to be flames burning in his eyes. He couldn't wait to cut them into pieces. You heard it. This is the evidence you want. What else do you have to say? If it wasn't the people from the Yuntian Tower, who else could it be? Compared to Nan Yuxing's anger and madness, Rong Xiu's expression was too calm. He nodded. Other than this, what else? Nan Yuxing's lungs were about to explode. Rong Xiu, what do you mean by that? Don't you think this irrefutable evidence is enough? Rong Xiu raised his eyebrows. It's just one side of the story. How can it be considered irrefutable evidence? You, Luo Yan, I want to ask you. Other than you and Nanny, was there anyone else who was with you that day? Rong Xiu ignored Nan Yuxing as he directly looked at Luo Yan and questioned him. Luo Yan slowly clenched his fists. But what I said just now is indeed the truth. Chu Luiwei chuckled. What you said is the truth, and what others said is a lie. Senior Luo Yan, I know that we offended you in the God-slaying tomb and you are unhappy with us. But you don't have to go to such lengths to frame us, right? You said that our people attacked you. What's the reason? As she spoke, she glanced at Nan Yuxing meaningfully. I think you are the ones who really want to kill us, right? He had never seen someone who could not forget something after winning a fight. Was it necessary? You. Luo Yan was furious. But Rong Xiu and Chu Luiwei's rebuttal was indeed reasonable. Just his words alone were not enough to convince everyone. Rong Xiu asked again. Luo Yan, you said that the people who attacked us that day were from the Yuntian Tower. If this is true, then we should kill the two of you. Since Nan Yi is already dead, then how did you appear here? Rong Xiu's words made Luo Yan even more speechless. I fainted at that time. When I woke up again, a long time had passed, and Yi was already, or on the mountain outside the Yuntian Tower? Chu Lu asked. Cold sweat broke out on Luo Yan's forehead. It's that. At this point he finally realized that something was wrong. If it was really the people from the Yuntian Tower who did it, there was no reason for them to kill Nan Yi alone but leave him alive. Moreover, why was it still in that place? No matter how bad it was, they should have changed the location. Could it be that the person who ambushed them just wanted to kill Nan Yi there? After Luo Yan woke up, he saw Nan Yi's miserable state of death, which was almost deformed. At that time, he was blinded by anger and only wanted to take revenge on the Yuntian Tower, so he quickly rushed back to the Nan family and discussed revenge with Nan Yuxing, who had just recovered. After asking around, they found out that Rong Xiu and Chu Luiwei had come to Peach Blossom Dock. Without saying anything, they directly brought the elders here. But when he heard the other party's question, Luo Yan finally realized that things were not what he had imagined. But it seemed a little too late to say this now. Uncle Luo Yan. Nan Yuxing shouted and woke Luo Yan up. Don't listen to these people's excuses. Other than them, who else in this world would be so ruthless to Yi? Swoosh. The blade glinted coldly. Nan Yuxing held the blade with both hands and pointed it at Chu Luiwei and Rong Xiu. It must be you guys. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1877. Nan Yuxing had already gone crazy. He had experienced too many things during this period of time, and it had long exceeded his tolerance. Previously, because his Yuan meridian was broken, he was disheartened and wanted to die. Later, his father finally found an expert to help him recover his Yuan meridian, and he even took the opportunity to successfully break through and become a supreme god. He was overjoyed. However, just as he was about to share this with Nan, he heard the sad news that Nan Yi was already dead. Because the damage to her body was too severe, Nan Yi Fun directly chose to bury her. Nan Yuxing didn't even have time to take one last look at her. Nan Yi was his only sister and the person he doted on the most. Now that she was suddenly gone, how could he accept it? Thus, he was filled with thoughts of revenge. Only by killing Rong Xiu and Chu Luiwei could he dispel the hatred in his heart. As for Luo Yan's hesitation, he didn't care at all. He was already certain that Nan Yi had died in their hands, and no one would be able to change his mind no matter who came to persuade him. Rong Xiu's eyes were cold. Nan Yuxing, who do you think you are pointing a knife at? His voice was as cold and low as usual, but at this moment, it inexplicably carried a heavy pressure that was difficult to defy. Nan Yuxing instinctively looked at Rong Xiu. When he met those cold and deep phoenix eyes, his heart suddenly trembled. Intense uneasiness and fear almost uncontrollably surged from the depths of his heart. That was a sense of danger. But these emotions were quickly suppressed by him. Fear? What was there to fear? Today, he had brought several elders with him, and he only had one goal: to kill Rong Xiu and Chu Luiwei and avenge Yi. Thinking of this, he smiled coldly. Rong Xiu, put away your airs as the chosen saint. This is Peach Blossom Cove, not your Yuntian Tower. Before he came, he had already asked around. This time, Rong Xiu and Chu Luiwei came very low-key. Rong Xiu only brought one confidant with him, and although Chu Luiwei brought many people with her, they were all her former subordinates and weren't a threat. Rong Xiu was powerful, and Chu Luiwei wasn't to be underestimated, but 2 fists were no match for 4 hands. Now that they were facing each other, their chances of winning. This is indeed not the Yuntian Tower. But this is the Yu residence. How dare you? Without waiting for Rong Xiu to say anything, Chu Luiwei spoke first. The sharp blade cut through the void. She had already grasped Scarlet Heaven's sword tightly in her hand. Looking at Nan Yuxing's expression, there was no point in saying anything. The only solution was to solve this problem. Seeing Chu Luiwei draw her sword, many scenes from the god-slaying tomb surfaced in Nan Yuxing's mind. This woman's strength was much stronger than she appeared to be. Nan shook his head and frowned, trying to get rid of those messy thoughts. There was nothing to worry about. No matter how strong she was just a high god. How could she possibly be a match for these gods? Thinking of this, Nan Yuxing's confidence was boosted. An eye for an eye. Today, I will take revenge for Yi. Before he could finish his sentence, Nan made his move. The surrounding energy of heaven and earth started to gather towards him, and finally, it all flowed into the saber in his hand. His aura surged, and the force in his body was almost boiling. The sky quickly darkened. The full force attack of a high god was not to be underestimated. Soul-breaking saber. As Nan shouted, the long saber in his hand slashed downwards. Along with a sharp whistling sound, a blood-red saber light flew out. Wherever it passed, the space collapsed inch by inch. On the ground, there was also a deep rut. The stone slabs cracked. Rong Xiu lifted his wrist and was about to make his move, but Luo Yan beat him to it and rushed towards him. At the same time, the 8 elders behind them also made their moves. The crowd moved according to their thoughts, and in the blink of an eye, they hovered in midair and surrounded Chu Luiwei and the rest, who were standing at the door. Nan had 10 people on his side. Although it was not as many as the entire Yu residence, they had more high gods. Everyone in the Yu residence was on high alert and formed a human wall. However, compared to the high gods, they were still slightly inferior. The saber was about to reach. A violent wind with a biting, cold, murderous aura surged towards them. Chu Luiwei's sleeves were swept up by the wind. She frowned slightly, and her feet slightly staggered. Then, she bent her knees slightly and leaped up. She went straight towards Nan Xing's saber light. Scarlet cloud soared. Chu Luiwei slashed down with her sword. The 2 forces collided. Boom! Terrifying turbulence spread out in all directions. Master! 13 shouted anxiously, and subconsciously took half a step forward. Sun Yi glanced at him. 13 seemed to have sensed something, and immediately stopped and woke up. He could not go over. With his current strength, Not only would he not be of any help, he would only cause trouble. The only thing he could do was to wait here and not cause trouble for his master. He looked anxiously at Sunyi. Big brother. The only one who could help now was his big brother, Qi. A gust of cold wind suddenly attacked them from behind. Sunyi's eyes turned cold, and he immediately turned around. With a wave of his sleeves, a tyrannical aura blocked the sneak attack outside. Sanson's eyes widened, and he was still in shock. Vice Leader Mo. What are you doing? He actually took advantage of the time when they were not paying attention to attack. Mo Yun suddenly sneered. I was wondering who it was. Rong Xiu Shangguanyu. I didn't expect you to come to me on your own accord. Digression, I won't trouble everyone to wait today. I'll update tomorrow. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1878. If he could kill the two of them on the spot, not only would he be able to make up for what happened to Lan Qingfeng, but he would also be able to gain the favor of the sect leader and rise to the next level. His status would not be able to rise any further, but he would have plenty of opportunities and resources in other aspects. Mo Yun had only heard of the two of them before, but he did not expect that they would take the initiative to come to him. Sanson's heart sank when he heard Mo Yun's words. Mo Yun seemed to have the intention to kill Master and His Highness? But Ink Sword sect had no enmity with them, so why? Before he could figure it out, Mo Yun suddenly flew up. At the same time, a bamboo tube appeared in his hand. He pulled it hard without hesitation. Swoosh! A sharp sound pierced through the air. Boom! A firework suddenly exploded in the sky. The firework was the special totem of Ink Sword sect with two swords surrounding the moon. Sanson's eyes widened and he blurted out, "Oh no!" He was summoning the entire Black Sword sect. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. In just a few breaths, the Yu mansion had become the target of everyone's attack. Although it was still daytime, the firework was still bright and dazzling. It stayed in the sky for a long time and did not dissipate. Sanson cursed in his heart. Why did Ink Sword sect come at this time? Oh Yun, we have never offended Ink Sword sect, so why are you hitting us when we are down? Sanson questioned sternly. Mo Yun looked at him from above. To be precise, he was looking at the group of people. Boss Sanson, you can't blame me for this. In the past 2 years, you have contributed a lot to Ink Sword sect. If you turn over a new leaf, I can still spare your life. After all, he could not bear to part with the treasures in the small space. Sanson spat when he heard that. This Mo Yun is too shameless. He took so many of his things for nothing, and in the end, he still acted like he was giving alms. If it was not to earn some money for Master, he would not have to stay in Peach Blossom Dock and suffer Ink Sword sect's anger for so long. Now, Mo Yun turned his back on him and even planned to attack Master. He naturally did not have to endure it anymore. Oh Yun, aren't you thinking too highly of yourself? Why don't you take a piss and look at yourself in the mirror and see what you look like now? I still haven't settled the score with you for robbing so many of my treasures. Now you want to bully my master? Do you really think I'm dead? Sanson was usually all smiles and rarely showed any displeasure to others, let alone speak vulgarities. At this moment, his sudden outburst shocked many people. Mo Yun was stupefied at first. Only after that did he react. Sanson was scolding him. His expression immediately became extremely ugly. 33. He's refusing a toast only to drink a forfeit. Sanson sneered, one hand on her waist, the other pointed at Mo Yun, and scolded, "Motherf asterisk cur, you don't even know my name. You still have the nerve to clamor here? I'm really giving you face." Mo Yun had never been pointed at and scolded like this before. For a moment, he actually couldn't think of any words to refute. He was so angry that his entire body trembled. He was so angry that he laughed. Since you've said so, then today, my Black Sword sect will not show you any mercy. The death of 133 was indeed a heavy loss to them. But as long as they could take down Chu Luiyue and Rong Xiu, The rest was not important. Swoosh swoosh. Just as the two sides were confronting each other, several people rushed out from the surroundings. They were the people who were in charge of secretly monitoring the Yu residents. Other than that, there were several figures rushing over from afar. They were also from the Black Sword sect. Just now, when Mo Yun sent out the signal, the people from the Black Sword sect immediately rushed over. Looking at the constantly gathering figures and the surging killing intent in the air, Nan Yuxing was first shocked, then he sneered. Shangguan Yu, Rong Xiu. Looks like your enemy is not only my Nan family. To be able to meet people who wanted to kill them in such a place, it could be seen that their arrogance had offended many people. Chu Luiwen knitted her brows slightly and quickly looked up. The people from the Black Sword sect were indeed rushing over. Mo Yun had made up his mind to make a move on them. He did not even care about 33 anymore. For a moment, Chu Liuyue's mind raced. She did not remember that she and Rong Xiu had offended the people from the Black Sword sect. They only knew about the existence of the Black Sword sect after coming to the Peach Blossom Dock. During this period of time, the Black Sword sect had frequently found trouble with 33, but they had endured it. Who knew that when Mo Yun heard their name, his attitude would suddenly change 180 degrees. No matter what, he wanted to take their lives. There was nothing to be afraid of if they were to face Nan Yuxing alone. Even if Nan Yuxing brought a few supreme gods with him this time, they might not lose. After all, the Yu residence was 33's territory. Moreover, they still had many trump cards in their hands. Once they fought, it was still unknown who would win and who would lose. But, now that the Black Sword sect was involved, things would be troublesome. Although the Black Sword sect had suffered heavy losses in the Azure Peak, they had a large number of people and did not care about these losses. The Black Sword sect was like an overlord in the Peach Blossom Dock. If they were determined to kill them all, the situation would not be optimistic. Although the people of the Yu residence were strong, they were definitely not a match for those people. Clang! Chu Luiwei waved her wrist and deflected Nan Yuxing's saber. Nan Yuxing's hand went numb and the saber in his hand almost fell from the impact. He was shocked and angry. The woman in front of him was clearly only a high god, but her sword just now was not much weaker than his. Nan Yuxing's face turned green and white. If he lost in this situation where he was sure to win, he would not have the face to continue living in this world. When he thought of Nan Yi's death, the anger in his chest surged even more crazily. All of you deserve to die. He shouted sternly and charged towards Chu Luiwei again. Chu Liuyue's eyes flickered and she had already made a decision in her heart. She sidestepped and dodged the saber. Then, without any hesitation, she took a deep breath and turned around, heading towards a certain direction quickly. Her movements were extremely agile and her speed was far beyond everyone's expectations. Originally, the few elders of the Nan family wanted to go forward and block her, but before they could do so, that slender and exquisite figure had already passed through their encirclement. Trying to escape? Not so easy. Nan Yuxing's saber missed. How could he be satisfied? Seeing that Chu Luiwei was about to run, he immediately chased after her. Rong Xiu, who was teaching Luo Yan, tipped his toes and ran over as well. Luo Yan had no choice but to chase after them. In the blink of an eye, the four figures were already far away. The people who were left behind looked at each other. Where were they going? Mo Yun clenched his fists and immediately followed at full speed. Today, no matter where they ran to, their lives were going to be his. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1879. Chu Luiwei was extremely fast. However, Nan Yuxing was already a supreme god expert. He was still faster than her when he went at full speed. The distance between the two was shrinking. I want to see where you can run to today. Nan Yuxing's expression was cold and ferocious. His desire for revenge had almost swallowed him up. At this moment, he couldn't hear anything and couldn't see anything. All he could think of was to kill Chu Luiwei. She was Rong Xiu's wife and the person that Rong Xiu treasured the most. If he killed her, It would be more painful than killing Rong Xiu directly. Therefore, from the beginning, Nan Yuxing's first target was Chu Luyue. Soon, they left the city and came to the mountain range. Looking around, there were pink and white peach blossoms in full bloom everywhere. The air was filled with the rich fragrance of peach blossoms. It was a lively scene. Nan Yuxing didn't think so. Does Chu Luyue think that she can use this steep and winding mountain range to hide from me by escaping here? Naive. Before coming to Peach Blossom Dock, he had already investigated the situation here. Mysterious, dangerous, unknown, chaotic. However, he didn't take it to heart. He came here just to kill 2 people. How much time and effort could he waste? Once the matter was settled, he could just leave. Peach Blossom Dock. What was there to worry about? Besides, from what he saw, there was nothing special about this place except for the rich energy of heaven and earth and the beautiful scenery. Nan Yuxing casually looked around and quickly retracted his gaze. The distance between him and Chu Luyue was still shrinking. At this rate, in less than half an hour, he would be able to whoosh. A reddish-gold figure suddenly appeared beside Chu Luyue. With a flap of its huge wings, the blazing flames caused the temperature of the surroundings to rise in an instant. Reddish-gold heavenly phoenix. Chu Luyue lightly jumped onto Dumpling. She gently patted Dumpling's head. "Let's go!" Bang! A clear chime instantly spread across the area. In an instant, the countless magical beasts in the forest below all knelt on the ground and looked at the figure in the sky in awe. The distance between the 2 sides widened again. Nan Yuxing's heart was filled with hatred. She had actually forgotten that she had such a contracted divine beast. With the help of the crimson gold celestial phoenix, it would be much easier for her to escape. Nan Yuxing's figure did not stop as he madly circulated the origin power in his body. Then, silver-white lightning flashed under his feet. His speed also began to increase at a rate visible to the naked eye. After Chu Luyue and Nan Yuxing, it was Rong Xiu and Luo Yan. At first, Luo Yan was only worried that Rong Xiu and Chu Luyue would join hands and Nan Yuxing wouldn't be a match for them. After all, Rong Xiu was also a supreme god. However, he soon realized that something was amiss. Rong Xiu didn't seem to be going at full speed. It wasn't obvious at first, but as time passed, the distance between Rong Xiu and Nan Yuxing didn't change at all. Only then did Luo Yan realize that Rong Xiu's goal didn't seem to be to chase after Nan Yuxing. Rong Xiu was a genuine supreme god expert. If he really wanted to chase after Nan Yuxing, why hadn't he narrowed the distance between them until now? Looking at the tall figure in white in front of him, Luo Yan realized in hindsight. Rong Xiu was actually blocking him. Every time he wanted to overtake him, Rong Xiu would appear intentionally or unintentionally and block his path, causing him to be unable to catch up. After so many times, Luo Yan finally couldn't take it anymore. "Rong Xiu, you're just wasting time by blocking me here. Are you really not worried about the safety of your princess consort at all?" She was a supreme god, while Nan Yuxing was a supreme god. If the 2 of them fought, she would almost certainly lose. And according to Nan Yuxing's current state, once he caught up, he would definitely fight to the death. Not stop until he died. Rong Xiu was actually so careless, Luo Yan really felt that it was extremely strange. Didn't Rong Xiu care a lot about her when they were in the god-slaying mound earlier? Why did it seem that he didn't even care about her life now? "Of course I'll protect Ai's consort. There's no need for others to worry about this. Luo Yan, if you have the time, you should think about how you're going to explain to Nan Yifan when you go back if Nan Yuxing dies in Peach Blossom Dock today." Rong Xiu stopped, turned around, and stared at Luo Yan with a faint smile. That pair of deep phoenix eyes seemed to have seen through everything. Luo Yan's heart skipped a beat, and he frowned subconsciously and looked away. "Master doesn't know that we're here this time. You don't have to use him to pressure us." Rong Xiu looked at him and chuckled. It was as if he had heard a joke. Nan Yifan is getting bolder. Not only did he frame Nan Yi's death on Yuntian Tower, he even dared to let Nan Yuxing and Luo Yan come to seek revenge. He was really not afraid of dying out. Luo Yan's heart beat even faster. For some reason, he always felt that he had nowhere to hide in front of Rong Xiu. Rong Xiu was clearly much younger than him, but every time they met, Luo Yin always felt that he couldn't see through Rong Xiu. This kind of feeling rarely appeared for him. Even when he was facing Nan Yifan, he didn't feel like this. Only Rong Xiu. This man seemed to be hiding too many secrets. Just as the two of them were in a stalemate, Luo Yin heard the whistling of the wind behind him. He looked back. Mo Yun and the others were also rushing over here. Although he didn't know why Mo Yun also wanted to kill Rong Xiu and Nan Yifan, they were now on the same side. Luo Yin spoke almost without any hesitation. I'm Luo Yin of the Nan family. I wonder if Vice Sect Leader Mo is interested in joining forces? Mo Yun glanced at him and nodded without any hesitation. But anyway, they had the same goal. If they could join forces, they could save some effort. The two of them directly agreed on the alliance. Mo Yun subconsciously looked at Rong Xiu, but found that his expression was still calm, as if he didn't care about this matter at all. Was he really confident, or pretending? Mo Yun didn't know, and he couldn't be bothered to find out. He knew about the Nan family's reputation. Not to mention other things, the few venerable gods who came here today couldn't be underestimated. As long as the two sides joined forces, Rong Xiu and the others today, boom! A loud sound suddenly came from afar. Mo Yun and Luo Yin turned their heads to look at the same time, only to see an icy blue flame soaring into the sky from the top of a mountain. Luo Yin was confused, but Mo Yun suddenly thought of something, and his expression changed abruptly. That direction was Lan Qingfeng. Chu Luiwei actually went to Lan Qingfeng? Digression, 6:00 recently, the pneumonia situation has been serious. Everyone should pay more attention to hygiene and avoid crowded places. Be careful. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 1880. At this time, of all places, why did she have to go to Lan Qingfeng? She should know that there were many people from Black Sword sect guarding Lan Qingfeng. Even under such circumstances, she still insisted on going. A white light suddenly flashed in Mo Yun's heart. Could it be, those two people from before were you guys? Mo Yun looked at Rong Xiu in disbelief. Because of his excitement, his voice became sharp. Rong Xiu narrowed his eyes and did not say anything. However, in Mo Yun's eyes, this reaction was no different from a tacit agreement. It must be them. No wonder from the beginning to the end, Sanson's attitude towards the two followers was very strange. No matter what, he insisted on protecting them and bringing them along. In the face of danger, Sanson's first consideration was those two people. After the incident, he was also the first to suggest that the two of them should be released. At first, Mo Yun only felt that it was a little strange, but he did not take it to heart. However, now that he thought about it, everything seemed to indicate something. The situation that day kept replaying in his mind. Mo Yun sucked in a cold breath. Perhaps the secret on Lan Qingfeng was not hidden with Sanson, but Rong Xiu and Chu Luiwei. Once this thought appeared, it spread wildly in Mo Yun's heart like weeds, almost causing him to be shocked and angry. He gasped and then ran in the direction of Chu Luiwei without hesitation. The key now was definitely Chu Luiwei. Luo Yin, who was at the side, was confused by the sudden situation. This Mo Yun, why does it seem like something terrible suddenly happened? He originally wanted to ask a few more questions, but Mo Yun had already gone over there, not giving him the time or opportunity. Looks like the situation is urgent, Luo Yin thought in his heart as he quickly followed. No matter what, it was definitely right to join forces with Mo Yun to stop them. Rong Xiu could stop one of them, but could he fight two of them? However, such optimistic thoughts were quickly shattered. Because the people behind had also caught up. The first to catch up was actually Tsin Yi. Mo Yun had just realized that something was wrong and planned to chase after Chu Luiwei when he felt a blur in front of him. A slender green figure appeared in front of him. When he saw the other party's face clearly, Mo Yun's heart thumped. This Tsin Yi was actually so secretive? The ability to catch up with him without making a sound was definitely a venerable god expert. But when he saw it before, he didn't notice it at all. When Luo Yan saw this scene from the side, he was also secretly shocked. He had some impression of this person. He seemed to be one of Chu Liyue's subordinates, and he was the big brother of that group of subordinates. But didn't she say that her subordinates had followed her in the Tianling dynasty? Born outside the divine ruins world. No one cared about this group of people at all. According to the grapevine, it seemed that many people in the Yuntian Tower looked down on them. But because of Chu Liyue's face, he barely managed to maintain a peaceful appearance. Sensing the divine aura on Sun Yi's body that could not be ignored, Luo Yan was stunned. This was a true venerable god expert. Even in the Yuntian Tower, such an existence was rare and definitely worthy of respect. How did the news from before spread? I didn't expect that Shangguan Yu would have a venerable god expert as a subordinate. Mo Yun gritted his teeth and said word by word. He did not act rashly, because he could clearly feel that Sun Yi's strength was not inferior to his. First, there was Rong Xiu, which was already difficult enough to deal with. Now there was Sun Yi. Just as the two sides were in a stalemate again, the sound of wind breaking could be heard. Mo Yun and Luo Yan both relaxed. Someone was here. However, before the corners of their mouths could curl up, a voice came from behind, causing their expressions to stiffen. Big brother, we're not late, are we? This voice. It was talking to Sun Yi. Mo Yun and Luo Yan looked at each other and saw deep shock in each other's eyes. Then, the two of them turned around at the same time and saw a few figures rushing over. It was Sanson and the others who were surrounded earlier. The Yu clan's 13 Yu had all arrived at the Yu residence. Even little Hachi, who was sleeping earlier, had rushed over. But other than that, there was not a single person from the Nan family or Majian sect. Luo Yan glanced around and blurted out, "Why are you guys here?" He thought that the ones chasing after them would be. Shouldn't these people have all been dealt with? Sanson chuckled and narrowed her eyes. Why can't it be us? Since someone had already come knocking on his door, how could he still hide his strength? Of course, they would give them a few slaps. Sun Yi's gaze swept across the few of them. Other than 13, who had not fought much head-on, Sanson and the others were more or less injured. However, it did not look serious. Sensing his gaze, Sanson hurriedly said, "Don't worry, big brother. Most of this is the blood of the Nan family and Majian sect. We're fine." Mo Yun and Luo Yan's faces darkened. What kind of words were these? Could it be that with their abilities, they could really be a match for so many people? So you guys were hiding your strength too? Mo Yun's gaze was as sharp as a knife as it fiercely scraped past Sanson and the others. Every word seemed to be squeezed out from the gaps of his teeth, carrying with it anger and resentment. It was fine if it was the others, but Sanson had been in front of him for so long, yet he did not realize this. To think that he had always thought that Sanson was completely under his control. Now it seemed that it was all a disguise. Boom! Another loud sound was heard. Heaven and earth shook. Everyone turned to look. The flames on Lan Qingfeng's peak were burning even more fiercely. Luo Yan and Mo Yun looked at each other. They had to rush over as soon as possible. Who knew what Chu Liyue was planning to do there? The last time Lan Qingfeng exploded, they almost failed to control him. If they were to do it again, the consequences would be even more unimaginable. Mo Yun's heart was boiling with anger. In the end, he chose to force his way out. Scram! At this moment, Lan Qingfeng was in chaos. As soon as Chu Liyue arrived, he attracted the attention of the people who were guarding Lan Qingfeng. At this moment, Mo Lin was recuperating. The incident a few days ago had caused him a lot of trouble. Now that he had managed to save his life, he naturally seized every opportunity to recover his strength. As soon as he sensed that something was wrong, he immediately became alert. He was a little confused when he saw what was happening. He didn't recognize the beautiful woman who was rapidly approaching. However, when he saw the crimson gold fiend under her, he immediately reacted. That was a crimson gold heavenly phoenix. Before he could ask, the woman had already charged towards Lan Qingfeng. Mobile users, Please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1881. Molin's first reaction was to mobilize the surrounding people to chase after her. Stop her! Ever since the enchantment on Lanqing Peak was broken, Molin was ordered to guard this place with his men. Mo Yun had ordered that no one was allowed to enter this place without his permission. Therefore, when he saw Chu Liwei barging in, Molin was naturally very nervous and angry. However, the crimson gold celestial phoenix was too fast. In the blink of an eye, the crimson gold figure had broken through the surrounding people's line of defense and headed straight for Lanqing Peak. Molin was anxious and angry. He used his full speed to chase after her. At the same time, a matter suddenly appeared in his mind. Crimson gold celestial phoenix. This was an ancient divine beast. Normally, it would not have any contact with humans. However, from the current situation, the crimson gold celestial phoenix seemed to be very obedient to that woman as though it was a contracted divine beast. There was a rumor in the Divine Ruins world that a woman had contracted the crimson gold celestial phoenix. Molin suddenly opened his eyes wide. That woman was the new princess consort of the Yuntian Tower, Shangguanyu. For a moment, Molin had mixed feelings. Countless questions flashed through his mind. Didn't she just get married to the saint of the Yuntian Tower, Rongxiu? Why did she suddenly appear here? Moreover, since she was here, did that mean that Rongxiu was here too? When did they come to Peach Blossom Dock? Why didn't Inksword Sect receive any news? Countless thoughts flashed through his mind. Molin's mind was in a mess. However, what made him even more uneasy was that Chu Liwei seemed to have a motive for coming here. When she came here, she brought the crimson gold celestial phoenix to Lanqing Peak without saying anything. What exactly was, boom? Just as the people of Inksword Sect came from all directions and planned to surround and trap Chu Liwei, the crimson gold celestial phoenix suddenly swooped down to the waist of the mountain. Then the woman waved her wrist. A faint blue flame suddenly burst out from the bottom of the mountain rock and shot up to the sky. The surging flames contained an astonishing amount of power as they spread out in all directions. Mo Lin and the others were the first to bear the brunt of the attack. They were immediately forced to stop and retreat swiftly. However, some of the scorching sparks still flew out and landed on Mo Lin and the others, causing them to feel scorching pain. Looking at the wounds that had suddenly appeared on his body, Molin was both shocked and angry, but more than that, he was confused and panicked. He hurriedly looked up, only to see that the crimson gold celestial phoenix had already charged up again, heading straight for the mountain peak. And that slender and exquisite figure stood on its back. The wind swept up her long hair and the corners of her clothes. Her beautiful eyes were filled with a biting cold battle intent. As if she had sensed Molin's gaze, she suddenly turned around to take a look. Even though there was still some distance between them, Molin could still clearly see that pair of eyes in that instant. Black as ink, bright as the stars. Mo Lin's footsteps hesitated for a moment. An indescribable sense of danger welled up in his heart. He did not know where this feeling came from, but it was very deep. Clearly, the other party was a high god expert like him. Logically speaking, there was nothing to be afraid of. Even if she had the crimson gold celestial phoenix, they had so many people on their side. At this moment, Chu Liwei raised her hand again. Boom! Another loud sound was heard. At another location halfway up the mountain, a second ball of flames burst out. Molin's heart felt as if it had been hammered by something. At this moment, he suddenly realized that Chu Liwei seemed to be able to control the flames on Langqingfeng Peak as she wished. Previously, the flames that had been burning for a few days had finally been extinguished and returned to the cracked mountain rocks. Now that she had made her move, the flames appeared again. Moreover, the aura seemed to be even more shocking than before. Lord Molin, this woman can control the flames on Langqingfeng Peak. I'm afraid she's not simple. Seeing this, the other people from Majin sect also realized that something was wrong, and they all became fearful. They might not know the identity of this woman, but they all knew how terrifying the flames on Langqingfeng Peak were. So many people had already died before, and they did not want to step on this path again. Once they became fearful, their combat power would be greatly reduced. At this moment, the people from Majin sect were like that. In fact, Mo Lin was one of them. Just from the 2 balls of flames that had suddenly erupted, he could already tell that Chu Liyue's strength was far beyond the rumors. Plus, she had the help of the crimson gold heavenly phoenix. They were even less of a match for her. Seal off Langfeng Peak. I want to see what she's planning to do. Hearing this, the others quickly responded. They did not move forward anymore, but chose to stay in their positions and attack together. Numerous forces flew out at the same time. They gathered above Langfeng Peak. The rich energy surged violently. Then this energy formed a huge barrier, trying to trap Chu Liyue within. Chu Liyue looked over, and her red lips curled up slightly. You want to stop me with just this? She straightened her back and held Scarlet Heaven's sword tightly with both hands. Surging origin power gushed out from his dantian and poured into the snow-white blade. She wanted to completely overturn this peach blossom cove and take a look. Previously, she was still hesitating on how to do this without batting an eyelid. Since she had already fallen out with Majin sect, then she might as well take this opportunity to make her move. Chu Liyue held her breath and concentrated, then she swung her sword fiercely. However, the sword light did not reach Langfeng Peak, but another peak at the side. Digression, there are 2 more updates today, and I will finish them before 8 o'clock. You can read them together later. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1882. A rainbow light pierced through the sky. The dazzling and bright sword light slashed down with a domineering aura. The crisp sound of something breaking was heard. The barrier that the people of Black Sword sect had just set up was shattered. The barrier did not even have the slightest effect on the Scarlet Cloud Sword. It had already turned into countless streams of light and scattered in all directions. Mo Lin and the rest felt the backlash and their faces turned pale. Immediately after, under their horrified gazes, the sword light accurately landed on another mountain peak. Boom! The sound was earth-shattering. A crack suddenly appeared on the steep and tall mountain peak. In an instant, a gale swept across and countless pinkish-white peach blossoms fell. Then, a faint blue flame surged out from the crack on the mountain peak. This scene caused everyone present to be dumbstruck. Because they were too shocked, everyone fell into a strange, deathly silence for a moment. After a while, someone muttered, "What's going on? Why is there a flame coming out from the bottom of the mountain?" The people of Black Sword sect knew that there was a secret hidden under the Azure Peak. Hence, the mountain fire raged on. Otherwise, Mo Yun would not have asked them to keep watch over this place. He would rather pay a huge price than give up on this place. Almost everyone had silently agreed that there was some kind of opportunity hidden in the Azure Peak. But now, why was the mountain beside it also burning? Did this mean that there was something hidden under the mountain peak as well? Mo Lin clenched his teeth in silence. Go back immediately. Report this to the vice sect leader. At this moment, even he could not guarantee what would happen next. However, before they could move, they saw another group of people approaching. It was Nan Yuxing, who had followed Chu Liyue all the way here. The scarlet gold celestial phoenix was extremely fast. Even though Nan Yuxing had already exerted all his strength, he still could not catch up with it. Moreover, the distance between the two of them had widened again. This was also why he had only rushed over after Chu Liyue had been here for a while. However, at this moment, Nan Yuxing was also confused by the scene before him. A trace of shock flashed across Nan Yuxing's face when he saw the bursting flames. If I didn't see wrongly, those flames seemed to be caused by Chu Liyue? She merely raised her hand, and flames began to burn on the mountain peak. This flame is clearly unusual. How did Chu Liyue do this? Nan Yuxing had just arrived at the Peach Blossom Dock today. Therefore, he did not know what had happened to Lan Qingfeng a few days ago. You are Mo Lin noticed Nan Yuxing and instantly became alert. Venerable God. Nan Yuxing coldly glanced at him. His gaze paused for a moment on the embroidered pattern of two swords circling the moon on their left chest. Someone from the Black Sword sect? Mo Lin felt a little uncomfortable. Judging from this person's tone, he seemed to be high and mighty. It was as if he didn't place the Black Sword sect in his eyes at all. Not bad. This is our territory. May I know who your excellency is and why you're here? Nan Yuxing sneered. Your territory? If this is really your territory, how can you allow that Shangguanyu to act so presumptuously here? Mo Lin's expression instantly turned ugly. What's more, can't you tell what I'm here for? Nan Yuxing raised his saber and pointed it at Chu Luiyue. I'm here today to kill her. At this moment, Chu Luiyue and Dumpling had already flown from Lan Qingfeng to the second mountain peak. She knew that Nan Yuxing had already caught up with her. She also knew that the people from the Black Sword sect were eyeing her covetously. However, she didn't care, because she had more important things to do now. She jumped down from Dumpling's body. At this moment, they were standing at the crack that had just been split open. Not far in front of them, there was a burning flame. Chu Luiyue held her breath and focused before she closed her eyes. Dumpling stood guard at the side, vigilantly observing the surroundings. When he heard that Nan Yuxing said that they were here to kill Chu Luiyue, Mo Lin's expression eased a little. Looking at the other party's formation, it didn't seem like they were lying. Mo Lin frowned and thought to himself. Looking at the current situation, even if they joined forces, they might not be able to deal with that woman. However, if they had this person's help, it would undoubtedly make things easier for them. After all, she was a venerable god expert. Her fighting strength couldn't be underestimated. If they could let the snipe and the clam fight, what is she doing? Just as Mo Lin was thinking of how to reap the benefits of the fisherman, a surprised voice suddenly sounded in his ears. He instinctively looked in the direction of the voice and saw Chu Luiyue standing still on the mountain peak with her eyes closed at this moment. She seemed to be waiting for something. Mo Lin frowned even more. At this moment, in this place, what was the meaning of her doing this? Could it be related to the blue flame? He thought about it repeatedly, but to no avail. On the other hand, Nan Yuxing didn't care at all. The flame was indeed strange, but it wasn't enough to make him feel fear. Looking at her, it was obvious that she was brewing something. If he didn't make a move now, when would he? Without hesitation, Nan Yuxing tapped the ground with the tip of his foot and charged towards Chu Luiyue. What? You can't escape anymore. His words were filled with undisguised mockery. From his point of view, Chu Luiyue had racked her brains to come here just to control the flames. If she thought that she could stop him with this, she was too naive. Chu Luiyue's thick and long eyelashes trembled slightly, but she still didn't open her eyes. At this moment, all her attention was placed on the flame. There should be. She had clearly sensed that under this mountain peak, go to hell. Nan Yuxing had already flown in front of Chu Luiyue. The surrounding energy of heaven and earth gathered crazily towards his long saber. In the next moment, he held the saber with both hands and slashed out. Wherever the saber light passed, the void began to collapse rapidly. Violent spatial fluctuations began to spread out with the two of them as the center. At the same time, a dangerous aura surged towards them. The expressions of Mo Lin and the rest changed. Quick, retreat. The void began to collapse in all directions. At this moment, Nan Yuxing didn't realize what was happening. In his eyes, there was only Chu Luiyue. His only thought was to kill her on the spot. Dumpling flew up. She flapped her wings. A burning reddish-gold fire suddenly flew out and rapidly formed a gigantic barrier in front of Chu Luiyue. Boom! The two forces collided violently. Nan Yuxing had used all his strength this time. After a short stalemate, cracks began to appear on the barrier. At the same time, countless spatial turbulences began to surge out from the collapsing void, crushing the barrier to pieces. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 1883. This scene finally made Nan Yuxing realize that the situation was not right. He quickly turned his eyes and took a closer look. In a short period of time, several black spatial rifts had appeared in all directions. At this moment, these spatial rifts were slowly intertwining and merging with each other, and the tyrannical turbulence that was constantly gushing out also began to fight fiercely. Countless chaotic energies collided with each other, causing the situation to become even worse. No? Nan Yuxing frowned. He had indeed not held back when he attacked just now. However, even if it was an all-out attack from a venerable god expert, it should not have caused such a situation. Moreover, he had just broken through as a venerable god. This situation was indeed a little strange. However, this thought only flashed through his mind for a moment before it was quickly drowned out by hatred. Right now, he only wanted to kill Chu Luiyue and take revenge for Nanti. As for the rest, it would not be too late to deal with them after all these things were over. Nan Yuxing was a very proud person. The things that had happened during this period of time had caused him a great deal of agitation. Therefore, his emotions were still in a very extreme state at this moment. If he could calm down now and take a closer look at the situation around him, he would realize that a terrifying danger was quietly approaching. Unfortunately, at this moment, nothing could enter his eyes, and nothing could enter his ears. He did not even take Mo Lin and the others' strange retreat to heart. He only wanted to kill Chu Luiyue. After the barrier that Dumpling had set up shattered, the terrifying blade light went straight for Chu Luiyue's face. The strands of hair on her forehead had been swept up by the wind. Dumpling was on guard, and there seemed to be flames burning in her eyes. Just as she was about to attack again, she heard Chu Luiyue's voice from behind her. "Found it." Dumpling turned around. Chu Luiyue suddenly opened her eyes. She raised her hand, and a black shield suddenly appeared in front of her. Nan Yuxing's heart skipped a beat. Previously, he had seen how powerful Chu Luiyue's shield was. He did not know if his attack after breaking through as a venerable god would be able to break through the black shield. Suddenly, his eyes narrowed. He saw that the black shield seemed to be different from before. He took a closer look and realized that a few pieces of rust had been peeled off from the surface of the metal. The shield, which was originally flat, became bumpy in an instant. It looked a little shabby. Nan Yuxing almost laughed out loud. "Shengguanyu, I haven't seen you for a while, and this treasure of yours has already been broken. Or is it that you don't have any other suitable yuan instruments on you?" Chu Luiyue clenched the black shield in his hand and looked up. Their eyes met. Nan Yuxing could clearly see the cunning glint in that pair of clear, black jade-like eyes. This made his heart sink. Chu Luiyue's red lips curved slightly. "To deal with you, this is enough." Just as she finished speaking, a stream of light suddenly flew out from the flames in front of her and headed straight for the shield. Almost at the same time, a piece of rust peeled off from the shield. That stream of light quickly replaced it. Nan Yuxing was standing closest to it, so he did not have time to see what it was. When he finally reacted, he saw that the black shield seemed to be glowing a few times and then quickly dimmed. That was, for some reason, he suddenly felt uneasy. Chu Luiyue had already flown up and blocked the attack with the shield in front of her. "Dumpling!" Hearing the call, Dumpling obediently flapped its wings and flew behind her. One man and one beast were hiding behind the black shield. Nan Yuxing forced a mocking smile. "It's just a pile of scrap, rumble." Before he could finish his sentence, the power of the two sides collided violently. An earth-shattering explosion. Nan Yuxing even felt that his ears were ringing. Even his heart became numb. But in the next moment, an even more shocking scene happened. After the sword light collided with the black shield, it did not stop at all and disappeared with a loud bang. In an instant, light scattered in all directions. The strong backlash caused Nan Yuxing's chest to shake, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Puff! His face instantly turned pale. He staggered back half a step. Although it was only half a step, it was a great humiliation to Nan Yuxing. He actually lost? He actually lost to a high god with the power of a god. He looked up in shock and anger and looked at the black shield in Chu Luiyue's hand again. What kind of yuan instrument was this? How could it block his attack so easily? Molin and the others who were watching from afar were also deeply shocked. For a long time, they were speechless. Even a high god like Nanyu Xing would end up like this. If it were them, they would probably end up even more miserable. Lord Molin, just now, something seemed to have flown out from the fire? After a while, someone finally spoke up. His voice was trembling. Molin was suddenly energized. That's right. Just now, something had indeed flown out from the fire and landed on her shield. What was that? Before they could figure it out, Chu Luiwei had already turned around and headed toward the third mountain. Her figure was light and agile, and her red dress fluttered in the wind. From afar, she looked like a ball of crimson flame, joyfully moving through the dense forest. Then she raised her sword again. Molin suddenly realized something, and his eyes widened in shock. She's going to split the mountain. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.